Hi, everybody, and welcome back to another edition of Beyond the Cage. I am your host, Jim Gramm. Joining me today, Billy Brandt and Colin Camper on the program. First up, we're going to talk about MMA headlines on this week's show. Then we're going to transition to recapping the main card of UFC 195, followed by our picks for UFC Boston, the fight night on Sunday on Fox Sports 1. Once again, as I mentioned, I am Jim Gramm. Billy Brandt's next to me, Colin Camper. And how's it going today, gentlemen?
Pretty good. It's a pretty exciting day for news.
All right, let's start first with some doping news. The positive anti-doping news, I guess, or performance-enhancing drug, whatever you want to call it, banned substances, I guess. Nick Diaz finally got his suspension changed. With all the controversy that surrounds the man from Stockton, California, the Nevada State Athletic Commission finally ruled to change his suspension from originally 5 years, and I think it was $162,000. And instead, he will only be fined $100,000 and will only serve a 18-month suspension, which, of course, is retroactive. So that means that he would be free and clear to fight pretty much anywhere in North America under the UFC banner starting in August.
August 1st.
As soon as he could return. And this is a big deal because this is even lower than had they not screwed him. If they originally went with what the rule stood, which was 3 years, he would still be suspended. There would be no controversy, and there was little Nick Diaz can do. But by overshooting their own rules by 2 years, they pretty much backed themselves into this position, that being the Nevada State Athletic Commission, and they pretty much had to, at the very least, reduce the suspension time. The fine thing, I wouldn't have. Well, me personally, I mean, I'm not the one getting fined $165,000. I stand corrected. I was off by $3,000. So forgive me on that, according to SheerDog.com. So the fine is probably not what Nick Diaz was really worried about as much as the amount of time. So he's only actually going to get, instead of 36 months, would have been 3 years. So he gets half that. So it actually kind of works out for Nick Diaz. It actually kind of works out this whole situation.
I'm happy with it because I think it's a step in the right direction as far as at least putting back to the commission and them realizing they're getting a little out of hand there on some of these rulings. I still think the way the case was laid out is a little worse. I don't think he should get anything, but it's definitely a step in the right direction. I'm really happy for Nick because obviously now we get to see him fight this year rather than possibly never ever again.
Yeah, no, it definitely wasn't about the money. I think for him, it's just more about the fact that the NSAC has been kind of just hounding on him for a while and everything. I mean, right? Yes, they've had the reasoning, but this case in particular, just because it's such a muck up, I feel like the extent of the punishment is just kind of a mockery. Like if he got what his reduced sentence is now, even like if this was the original punishment, the 100,000 and then 18 months, with the crappy way they handled the situation, I don't think it would have drawn as much attention. A lot of people say, "Well, it's a bummer that he got screwed," but because it was a 5-year suspension with 165,000 pay, I mean, that's really tough. And he doesn't get to touch. A big thing about this, I'm kind of glad he got this settlement, is that he's not allowed to touch any of his fight purse because of this until they come to an agreement on how much he's actually getting fined. So he actually will just now be able to start touching that money from 12 months ago. So good for him.
Yeah, and chances are he'll probably never fight in Vegas again.
Probably not.
I have a feeling that he just personally won't. I don't think there's any way he'll do that. So Nick Diaz next fight, definitely not in the state of Nevada. I would imagine he probably will strictly just fight in California or pretty much
Canada,
else, or
Georgia's.
Canada, I guess, yeah. But we'll see where that next fight will be, what weight class, who it's going to be against, because he's always a name people kind of throw out around both welterweight and middleweight now.
I think a good thing for him that does come out of this, if you want to look at a positive, is this got so much mainstream attention that this ups his star power for his next fight. I mean, he's definitely going to get a lot more viewers, maybe even a little more money out of it because of it.
probably get a fight pass fight. He's going the route of Anderson Silva, where I mean, I say it, but I mean, Silva's headlined against Bisping over London on a fight pass card.
You know what,
Silva's
though?
just taking money
You're
star
not-
power fights.
Honestly, that's not that like far-fetched an idea. That
I'm
Nick
saying-
Diaz return fight,
Let's just be real.
August, Stockton, California, because they do have an arena there,
Yeah.
exclusively on Fight Pass.
Hey, I'm just saying his last 2 events have been headlining on Fight Pass. Those NSA hearings and everything.
It's true. Those were on Fight Pass.
King, so.
I mean, what a way to boost Fight Pass sales.
Oh yeah, if you didn't have it, well, I can't speak because I do, but that's definitely how you jump on it. Nick's the perfect
That's
draw.
not a bad thing. And also because it's on their thing, if he swears or something, which the Diaz brothers are known for,
Really?
they don't have to blink it out or anything. So
I thought
that's not bad.
That'd be fun. Maybe get his own TV show.
Nate's speech on Fox was amazing. I mean, they're pretty friendly.
I had to watch the behind the scenes video with Megan, who interviewed him. She interviews all the winners, and you got to actually hear what he said without the bleeps, which was nice. So you
A
had
long,
to,
continuous
haven't-
beep.
so you haven't watched that quick interview? Go check it out. So, all right, let's stick with the UFC's middleweight division here. Yoel Romero, no suspension or fine yet, but he has failed a out of competition drug test and was flagged by the US ADA just today. And it looks as though his potential title shot against Luke Rockhold is in jeopardy. And Romero is the 3rd fighter caught by the US ADA. Of course, Mirko Krokop as well as Gleason Tebow were also recently caught with violations as well. And we'll also talk about Krokop here in just a second. But looking at Romero, it's an out-of-competition test. It still is a big deal, but I think he still gets a title shot when this whole thing's cleared up. But I think the UFC will push for someone else to fight in his place, because I'm imagining this is going to be at least a 6-month suspension.
Well, it's tough because if he gets, and rumor has it, a specific steroid, if he ends up getting popped for it, this month the USADA enforcement in combination with the UFC, everything just now fully went into effect, all the behind the scenes stuff.
That's true. We don't know the substance
And
yet.
so we don't know the substance yet, but in a severe enough case, it's under the new regulations and how it all works, it would be for out of competition, it would be 2 years, I believe. And then it's like a $40,000 fine or something like that. But the big thing there is just the 2 years, just because that would put him out till he's 40.
Yeah,
and
he
then,
pretty much would be done.
you know, and if he was on something, obviously he wouldn't be on something if he came back. So,
I mean, you kind of said it when you first started looking at Yoel Romero.
yeah.
If there's anyone I wasn't surprised for, it's a 38-year-old Hulk. I mean, the dude is just, he doesn't pass the eye test, but you never know not to put too many rumors or questions. But what I want to look at more is what happens for the division now. Like you say, what happens now with that title shot? I mean, do you get a Weidman rematch? Do you get Vitor? Does Jacare still? I mean, that fight was really close.
Yeah, there's a lot of question marks there, because I'm pretty sure Luke Rockhold wants to fight. You know, he said it in interviews that if he's going to fight, he doesn't want to fight at UFC 199 because he feels like it would be heartbreaking because all the promotion would be for 200. So he goes, he doesn't want to, if he doesn't fight at UFC 198, he would either have to be on 200 or something after. So we know Luke Rockhold does not want to fight at UFC 199. So if a decision hasn't been made on Romero's status by sometime around there, yeah, that does open the door for Weidman and Jacare and Vitor Belfort. All those guys then become viable contenders. Now, just in my opinion, just real quickly, I actually think Jacare would be the front runner. Like you said, it was a close fight, Billy, but also Jacare already fought Luke Rockhold back in Strikeforce for the Strikeforce middleweight title, and that was a very close 5-round fight between those two gentlemen. I think that was like 4 years ago. So I think that is a really good rematch. And you look at rematches with Luke Rockhold, Jacare's fight with Rockhold was a lot more competitive, in my opinion, than Weidman's fight. And I think it would do Weidman good to fight somebody that wasn't a title to try to get him back in the swing of things. You know, whether that's Vitor Belfort, Lyoto Machida, if Tim Kennedy ever wants to return again, the winner of Bisping and Anderson Silva. I'm sure I'm missing somebody. The winner of Mousasi Talazlate, whoever that may be, someone else in the fold I think might be better because he's never lost before in his career. So give him someone not as high up to kind of build him back up as a contender again. Is I guess what I'm trying to say.
Definitely. Yeah, I feel like Rockhold. I think it's kind of cut and clear now what it's going to be. I 100%. Almost with confidence to say it's not going to be Romero. I think there's just too much controversy with him as of late for that really to set anything in stone. And if he wants to fight soon at 198, that's basically a month or two away from being confirmed almost or anything. It's probably going to be Jacare. I think that's actually an excellent idea. Jacare doesn't take a lot of fight damage generally. He bounces back pretty well. That's the fight to make. Vitor, I don't think he needs it or earned it right now, even though Rockhold wants it really bad. Weidman definitely needs to take a little bit more time off and warm back up with another opponent. And there's other middleweight fights that you could get a winner out of that you could argue, like, Bisping if he upsets Silva, or Silva if he does something crazy on Bisping. But even then, I feel like Jacare Rockhold would be the fight. And I feel like it just probably end up co-manning DC Jones. So
Yeah, I agree. I mean, I think most people think or argue Jacare won that fight anyway. It was a contender fight. Now it's going to be a no contest. They fought before, like you said, to a real competitive 5-round decision. I think there's no real reason you don't make that fight. The way Weidman kind of got just dominated, honestly, at the end of that fight, I don't think he's ready to have a big first loss. And I think there's a lot of good fights for him to make rather than just trying to push a rematch with that. So I think Jacare is a good contender.
All right, let's get to Mirko Cro Cop. Of course, was suspended by the US ADA for taking HGH, but now that all the dust has kind of settled, he actually didn't fail any of his tests leading up to his fight against Anthony Hamilton at UFC Fight Night in South Korea. But the fact that the former Pride Grand Prix champion admitted to using a performance-enhancing drug like HGH, that was enough for the US ADA to suspend Mirko Cro Cop. And as a result, kind of messed up himself. If he never would have said he had taken HGH, he would be hurt, but he would still be able to continue fighting with the UFC sooner rather than later. And hindsight is 2020, but I think Cro Cop felt that if he couldn't get healed from this quick enough, that he wasn't going to be in the game much longer anyway, and just kind of admitted it. And I think he was looking for an exit because that was all he saw at that point. So as much as fans of the great striker would be like, oh, if he wouldn't have said anything, he'd be fine, I still think that he might have went into retirement anyway. I guess it kind of sucks, but like I said, I think the same result would have happened regardless whether he admitted it or not.
Yeah. And it sucks, but I mean, he's an honest guy. I mean, he fell on his sword for this. I mean, he figured if there's a chance of him getting caught, he may as well come clean himself rather than have this scandal. And I mean, honestly, it's had positive effect on him. A lot of people were just more bummed out rather than mad at him. But I feel like best case scenario, and this is just hopeful, the UFC might see some pity on him. They might just cut his contract, and I would just love to see him over on Rizin.
And hopefully just maybe put him right in the UFC Hall of Fame. I know they have the Pioneer section. I think he's a guy that fits into that category.
That'd be a dream, but we all know the UFC is not going to let that happen.
Yeah, he doesn't have a good enough record, unfortunately. Yeah.
Well, no, it's just the UFC knows if Cro Cop goes against Fedor.
Oh, cutting his contract? I mean, they might. I don't know. I mean, what else is he going to do? I mean, we don't even know the terms of his contract. Was it a 2-fight contract or just a 1?
I give Rizin the best possible fight they can have, though.
Because the UFC knows they're better than that. That's 1 fight, and then that's it.
I know that they should feel that way, but they're not going to. They're scumbags. No, I hate situations like this because I feel like sometimes Mirko, I feel like he might not even sometimes they pressure you and say, hey, we got you busted, just come out and admit it and we'll give you less. And he said, maybe I was taking something off my shoulder, maybe this. And he comes out and says, whatever, you got to tell you, I'll take it, so whatever punishment, let's get this over with. And then it turns out nothing happens. You never know, I hate it.
I don't know what the fine is for breaking his contract because he probably get paid out the butt at Ryzen. He might just get enough to eat it and just say, whatever. I don't care about the money. I care about my legacy.
I'm not really sure how that would work because
I've never.
UFC just sue Rizin for
Well, I mean, what Couture did it right. He broke his contract, and they just kind of got mad at him, just cut it. No, but not so much as fighting
That was
outside
like
of
the EA Sports thing.
no,
too.
not
Remember
well,
that?
Couture. Yeah, he walked
Yeah.
out, but so did no. Well, BJ Penn, not BJ Penn. Couture did the one where he worked with Spike TV and everything and stuff. But Tim Sylvia did the same thing, right? Where I think
might
when he
have
won the
done
heavyweight, he went and fought somewhere else, and they got mad at him, cut him, and stripped him, and that's how Couture came champ. I thought.
I think something like that. Yeah.
I'm too young to remember, so.
All right, let's get to what's supposed to be a great fight the first weekend of March. UFC 197 is official. 2 title fights will be on the card. The main event, Conor McGregor, the recently crowned featherweight champion, will move up to take on Rafael dos Anjos, who's fresh off defending his title for the first time against Cowboy Cerrone. As of right now, the UFC has not told Conor to vacate his featherweight title. So as of right now, Conor, win or lose, will still be the featherweight champion of the UFC. I think that's maybe even bigger than him simply moving up, because it was already rumored about for a month that he may move up for his next fight. So he is moving up to fight Rafael dos Anjos. And the co-main event, Holly Holm will not wait for Ronda Rousey and the rematch, as she will take on Miesha Tate in the co-main event of the evening. And I like the main event. I was a little against Conor moving up, but I think the fact it's Dos Anjos, it's someone that's a completely different style of fighter. And no offense to Cowboy Cerrone, that fight would have been fantastic against Conor McGregor. We kind of know what we were going to get, more or less. We were going to get a great kickboxing match between those two. But with Dos Anjos, he brings great jiu-jitsu, a great top game, the threat of takedown, and a guy that is big for this weight class and can go 25 minutes and really stifle him. Ask Anthony Pettis about that. So this is great, and they say styles make fights, and I think that's why it's a better fight, because it's a contrasting styles. And I think it's a huge test for Conor McGregor, who has fought at 155 in the past, just not in the UFC.
Yeah. Well, I feel like this is a win-win for McGregor and the UFC. I think it's actually a really smart move, because what's going on here now is Dana said he doesn't have to leave the belt or strip it or be stripped. And I think they're lining up for a couple of things. One, if McGregor does win, you got the first 2-time champ that's simultaneously holding both belts.
Since Stan Henderson.
Well, he didn't hold both belts at once.
Yes, he did.
In the
Yeah.
UFC.
I meant in Pride. Yeah.
Oh, yeah, in Pride, definitely.
And then the only other one right now is David Branch, currently for World Series of
Yeah.
Fighting.
World Series. But I mean, the first time UFC,
yeah,
said they could actually mark it, like, holding both belts at once. And if he gets a win there, I mean, look what's going on right now. That's kind of crazy. But if he loses, which there's a very strong chance he will, because Dos Anjos, look at him. But that's the thing. It's Dos Anjos. Look at him. I mean, all the haters and anyone who's doubting McGregor now he's moving up. He's going to go fight a guy, basically after a month of winning his last belt against a pound-for-pound best. And if he loses there, it's like, okay, well, you fought up a weight class. You did it basically on 3 months. I mean, it's a guy who's basically the antithesis to your style of fighting, and it's just like, okay, and you're still featherweight champ. Now you got a loss on your record. Now we know what it's like when you lose. I mean, no one's really going to be mad at him, because he's still marketable, because he'll still fight Frankie Edgar at featherweight.
Right. It's a little. It's a risk.
It's a risk, not nearly big as a risk as if he would be like risking his own belt. The thing is, he'll still be a champ if he loses.
There's so much things I want to talk about in this fight. Because first, I won't even get into stylistically that much, because I'm sure we're going to talk about this fight for a ton of months ahead. But I just want to put what this fight is. I think we just got to sit back and appreciate. This is going to be the first ever real super fight we get, where 2 pretty dominant champs, Rafael and Conor, still new, but I mean, Conor still went through a list of them. Rafael went through a list of them. In their prime, are going to go at it. And another thing this does for McGregor, if there's anyone left that hates on this guy, you just can't, because he could have sat there and took 5 easy money fights with that featherweight title. But instead, he went for the biggest risk there was. Maybe not the biggest, I guess. Maybe you could argue Frankie was a bigger risk stylistically, and this is a different weight class. You still argue he still has 4 around him. But he wants no easy fight, no just take this money, build up a couple. He wants to go for legacy, just go for the toughest anything you say he can do. So I love that. And then we can also, me and Colin were kind of bringing up the fights that sets up at lightweight because we were talking about how Tony Ferg now sits in line. And could you imagine like a Tony Ferg Nate Diaz fight right now?
Could be very probable.
And that was, he brought up just a lot of good matchups get made up. Same with featherweight. I think Frankie doesn't make any decisions until after March 5th and sees how that goes. Because if it's a quick one, I assume Conor will try and defend at 200 versus 45 though. There's just so many things to this fight. I don't know where to start, but it's huge. It's a super fight, and we're really lucky to see this.
And of course, Holly Holm against Miesha Tate. I think this is the right move by the UFC. There was just a report that came out that said Ronda might not even be ready to go for UFC 200. So, well, acting on SNL is not the same as getting
she
kicked
came out
in the face by Holly Holm.
Right.
No,
Well,
I'm saying, like, she has so many other things. I don't think we'll see her.
well, she said she had a movie schedule filming that was bumping up really close to 200, so she wouldn't have the time for a camp.
Yeah, so
she
that
said
to
no.
me, they even probably didn't know that. Then this has been rumored for a while that Holly Holm would fight somebody else. So it works out perfectly because then you can still have the women's title defended at UFC 200, whether it's Holm or Tate. And it would, it'd be it's a nice boost to the card, and it's an easy one to fit in. And if Holly's able to beat Miesha Tate, who has been on a roll as of late, it really solidifies herself to me as the #1 female fighter in the world at 135 pounds. And even though it's not Ronda Rousey, I still think beating Miesha Tate is a pretty big deal.
I think Miesha Tate's a way tougher matchup for than Ronda Rousey. And I kind of want to get off Rousey and just talk about this fight, but like, I don't want to see that fight again now. If I see Rousey coming off the biggest loss of her career, the first loss, I would expect her to be chomping at the bit to get back in there and get her hands on Holly Holm. Instead, she's just kind of chilling, doing movies, doing SNL, whatever. I kind of don't want to see her come back at this point if she's not going to really want. I mean, who's to say? She still could be, but it's just not what I would expect.
I mean, well, that's an interesting point, though, because, that's the biggest loss of her career. I mean, she was basically considering retirement after that fight. There was probably going to be no Cyborg fight. Let's be real with ourselves. But she just said no to the biggest boss she's probably had in her life, to the biggest paycheck she'll probably get. She said no to UFC 200, which she was obviously a draw for that card. And she said, no, I got other, commitments that are going to back up to it. I mean, her acting career is nowhere touching her fighting career. And that's the thing, is like, win or lose your last fight. UFC 200 was the biggest thing for her to happen, especially for the UFC. And she just told her boss, it's not going to work. So it's like, I think she's done.
If she came out and was like, you know what, because I agree with this, a lot of people come back too fast after big knockouts, and it's not good for them. She's like, hey, I want to take a full year off, try and do this right, because you see people like Mendes now, they come back too quick, they get knocked out again. But she didn't. She's just like, hey, I'm doing movies right now. And I would expect the complete opposite. I would expect her to be saying, all right, you know what, I let movies distract me. I'm a fighter. I want to get back in there.
Exactly. I think she's done with that belt. So I'm going to be surprised.
We'll see. We'll see. We got a lot of year left. A lot of 2016 left.
To kind of get into it too a little bit, because I don't want to completely shadow it. Miesha Tate's a great fight for Holly Holm. It's a great fight. I think, like I said, it's a better matchup.
She mixes it up really well.
Ronda,
So
her wrestling is, I think, better mixed with her striking than with her fought. So that's an exciting fight, and like you said, I think it is the right move to do.
But then we can segue into the event this weekend as a possible fight for Holly Holm.
Possibly. If Cyborg's not going to fight Ronda Rousey, maybe the winner of Tate and
even if it's just a catchweight or something.
And
doesn't have to be for
the aforementioned Cyborg will be main eventing Invicta FC 15 this Saturday in Costa Mesa, California, as she will be taking on Daria Agobramova.
That's my guess.
Sure, we'll go with that. Also, defending her strawweight title for the first time, Livia Renata Souza will take on Deanna Bennett for the co-main event of the Eastern. Also, Raquel Paului will be taking on Colleen Schneider. Megan Anderson, a lot of people are high on her, will be taking on Amber Liebrock. Amanda Bell against Indiana Gomes will be on the card. One of the best non-UFC strawweights in Mizuki Inoue will be taking on Lacey Shuckman. Also, former tough contestant Angela Hill will make her Invicta debut against Alda Gray. Those are some of the fights there on the card. Is this just going to be another Cyborg running over someone in like 45 seconds, or does Daria does she make it out of the first round?
I feel like it's too much pressure. She just got thrown in there, and this fight's this weekend. And she just got signed to Invicta. She's on Fight Pass now. She works for Zuffa, biggest stage of probably her career. and you're going up against Cyborg, who arguably could be the baddest woman on the planet, fighter-wise. You know, I mean, until we see her match up with others. I mean, she's a 145er. She's big, she's strong, she's powerful, and she flattens women. And this is no knock on Daria, but you just got thrown into the Shark Tank on someone who's pretty lethal, you know. So we'll see what the pressure does for her.
Yeah, 45 seconds. I don't see much coming out of this fight. The best thing I see coming out of this fight is if Cyborg runs through her, and then the best way that Holm or Misha could just
Fights her at 200.
Yeah, if they just say, hey, let's forget Rousey, and then I'll up her because she would never move up and fight Cyborg. We'll do it. Because I think Misha already called Cyborg out.
Misha said that she would fight
So
Cyborg.
She would do it, and I think
And Holly said she would too.
said the same thing. So I think
Yeah,
the
it doesn't
best
even
thing-
have to be for the title.
No,
It doesn't.
145 just to catch weight, whatever you want to do.
Just for
And
fun.
that's the biggest fight you're going to get, and you're going to forget about Ronda now because you got Cyborg to win.
That's the nail in the coffin for Ronda
And
too.
it makes sense because if, let's say, vice versa. Well, I'm going to say it more if Holly wins. If Holly beats Misha, the list of contenders is not that great,
Nope.
realistically.
No.
Right, but Kat has to fight somebody, and Amanda Nunes would be great, but still I'd like one more fight from her. So to me, you give time for that contender to materialize and have
Take a fun
potentially Holly or Misha fight Cyborg, catch weight, then come back. That would be in the beginning of July, maybe like October, November, then the title against that.
That would be insane if we had a Christiane and Holly fight. It's probably the best women's striking match we've ever seen. I'd be up there with some of like the men's fights striking wise. I mean, because you got someone who throws as much forward pressure as Rousey, but instead of trying to get that takedown or that clinch, she's in there to try and punch her face off, and that's Christiane.
And she definitely has a lot more skill. Rousey's just never winging.
Oh, that's what I'm saying. It's like she comes in with that striking, like, oh my gosh.
If
And
Misha ever wanted revenge at Ronda, I mean, that's a good way to say, hey, you got me, but you never fight Cyborg. I went up and did this.
Mhm.
Same
Right.
with Home, whatever. She doesn't need to, but
Exactly.
but if we get the upset, I mean,
Right?
I also
Either
wanna
way.
see Daria.
right.
That if Daria wins, we talked about big upsets.
I will learn how
you
to
know,
pronounce her
odds.
last name appropriately if she wins.
I mean, if that the thing though, you gotta take if you take her, you would just pick that fight because if she has to be part of your parlay, I feel like you're not winning. You probably win all
You
your
probably just-
parlay fights.
Well, if you parlay-
get to Daria Cyborg, and you're like, if Daria just wins, I win this 8-fight parlay. Don't take that as part of your parlay for Invicta 15.
Right after
I will
get
tell you that.
Powerball, I'll give Daria.
Right. All right, let's get to UFC 195. Of course, this is our first show here of 2016. So again, thank you for joining us here in another year of Beyond the Cage. If you haven't seen it already, of course, we already did our award show. We put it out before everybody else so you could see it and digest it and see how good we did. I'm picking the best of for 2015. So that's right on our YouTube channel, youtube.com/Beyond the Cage podcast. And also, we're trying to get 500 likes. If we get to 500 likes, we already showed the photos, I believe, on the award show. If we can get to 500, facebook.com/Beyond the Cage podcast, we're going to do a huge giveaway. It's going to be huge. Donald, the Steelers
Bigger than
Wolf
Yoel
Show,
Romero.
Huge. Yeah, it's going to be huge. We're going to give away some sweet stuff.
We're making MMA podcast these great.
That's what we're going to try to do. So, all right, looking at UFC 195, let's give a shout out real quickly to some of the undercard winners. Unfortunately, our friend Joe Duffy, great fight, but
Awesome fight.
didn't quite perform the way I thought he would. Dustin Poirier was able to really put a beating on the man from Ireland en route to a unanimous decision victory. And this is a huge win for Dustin Poirier, who, to me, this is a signature win at 155. He had the 2 fights before. Sure, he finished those guys, but those weren't highly regarded guys. But beating somebody like Joe Duffy is a really big deal. And to me, this really shoots Dustin Poirier up the rankings, and I think he's going to get a big name for his next fight.
Oh,
And
definitely.
it could potentially even be a Fight Pass or FS1 headline fight. I
hope
think
so.
it's going to be that type of potential. If you look at the performance he had against the quality guy like Joe Duffy, this is just a huge victory for the Diamond.
Yeah, I mean, this is absolutely for going up to 155. He's looked so strong, so solid. I mean, I'm really excited for him in this little run here, but in his next couple fights, he is going to get one of these top 10 guys, and we're going to see how real it is. Because I mean, there's no arguing he deserved that fight, but if you look at the list of guys, I don't know who you match him up with. Maybe a Johnson. Shoot, we talked about Diaz Berg, which would be amazing. I would not be mad at the Diaz Duffy fight stylistically. That'd be an exciting fight to watch.
Definitely. Yeah, it's gonna be tough for Poirier to just to have the guy who gave you a pretty devastating loss now get a title shot in the division you just went to. That's got to be interesting lineups there. But more interestingly enough is just where Joe Duffy goes from here. He has some holes. I feel like I noticed like when he was fighting Poirier, it just feels like in between a takedown or in between striking exchanges, there wasn't much happening. You know, Poirier would go for a takedown and then just Duffy just in between getting there, just nothing was going on from Duffy. He's good on top or in guard, and he's great when he's standing in the feet, but in between those transitions, there isn't much going on there where Poirier was putting all the work. So Duffy has some work to put in there, but I feel like that was a perfect fight for him to lose because he's just going to patch that up and he's going to be an awesome fighter for the top 15.
I'm just thinking now, how funny would it be if Poirier moves up a weight class, works his way up to a title shot, and it's McGregor again?
That would be crazy. All right, also a huge shout out to Michael McDonald, his first fight in over 2 years. Not only does he get the win over Masanori Kanehara, he submits him in the second round in a fight that you could make a case he was losing and actually was almost submitted himself as Kanehara had an arm triangle choke locked up. McDonald was able to kind of move to the side, do a quick sweep, overtook Kanehara's back, and then sunk in a rear naked choke of his own to get the tap. And not only did he get the win, but this is really great because, again, he hasn't fought for over 2 years. I don't know if there were a couple other options that they maybe could have gave performance of the night to, but I'm really glad they gave it to Michael McDonald to give him that extra money. Much deserved for Michael McDonald. And he's a guy that, with the win, to me, moves right into the top 15 of the bantamweight division where he left off before his injury. And he's a guy that has a lot of interesting fights. Obviously, I know they're moving ahead with Cruz and Dillashaw coming up this weekend. Faber may look to, but if Asunciao can get back on track, I'd love to see Michael McDonald against Rafael Asunciao for a number one contender fight here coming up, or at least close to a contender.
Definitely. You know, his win past few weeks ago, it was really good. You know, they call that cooking the beans in jiu-jitsu, and that's where you wait a guy out where he's trying stuff and you're in a guard or you're under on your back and you wait him out. You let him do his thing. Eventually, you see your opening. He'll be tired, and you just pounce on it as soon as you can. And he's a crafty dude. He was a really decent fighter when he left off. And other than that quick loss he took to Barao, I think that faded from a lot of people's memories. So I'm glad to see him come back strong, you know, and almost more of a patient fighter. And there's good fights. I think a Sun Sao fight would be great. We'll see how Sun Sao comes back from the injury.
Yeah, this is huge for him because he comes back, he's in trouble, he goes through adversity, he pulls off a really slick submission, like you said, good on him. He gets a couple $100 out of his pocket, and it puts him where he left off. I think when he took those couple tough losses, was it Brown and Faber?
Yep. Mm-hmm.
And I mean, he was really young at the time. Now he's had a couple of years. He's analyzed the game. He's back. He's strong. I think it's time. If he wants to make a real run, he very well can. He's still really young. He had an impressive win. Now he gets back. I like the Asunciao idea, but even though I'm starting to look at him like Khabib, like, yeah, it'd be cool if we ever see him again. And I don't know, so I don't want to count on it. But Mike McDonald's right where he left off. It's a top 10 fighter for this.
I mean, a quick sign on just the 2-year layoff from McDonald is just that he took, what was it, like 2 or 3 different injuries during that layoff.
Yeah, it wasn't just simply one injury.
Right.
Yeah, it was
and
multiple
so
injuries.
What's nice about this is this shows that he decided he really wants to stick with this sport.
Mm-hmm.
He didn't take that 2 years and think, you know what, this isn't for me. I'm going back to the coal mine like TJ Grant. He's in here to win it, so I'm ready for it.
The first fight of the pay-per-view card was in the lightweight division as Abel Trujillo took on Tony Sims. It was a quick finish, but I guess not the way most of us, and of course us here on the show, predicted. We thought it'd be a knockout by either one of these gentlemen with their incredible power, but Sims was caught coming in for a takedown, trying to change things up on Trujillo, who of course is notoriously awful off his back, and he got caught. Those huge guns there of Trujillo was able to snap up his neck, and he got Sims to tap in the first round at the 3:18 marker. And while Sims is a powerful striker and, you know, maybe not the highly touted guy, this is a very nice bounce back win for Trujillo, who, again, if he can get his conditioning a little bit under control and at least maybe not submit guys off his back, but be able to, you know, get back up quickly with his power and strength, he is a guy that can be a force to be reckoned with in his division. And I think it's a step in the right direction for Trujillo.
Yeah, this is a good win for Trujillo. I mean, it shows he has a couple more weapons, like you say. Obviously, He still has a lot of holes in his game. I don't know if he's ready to get in that top 10 area, but he's definitely moving forward. And it's a big win for him. You go in there and you get it done by submission, and he finishes a good way to step forward. So I think we're going to see big things from him soon.
Yeah, no, this is he used a lot of that power that he'd be punching him in the face, and he actually just used it to choke him out pretty nice. And yeah, you know, I like I'm about Trujillo. You know,
We all are.
I like his fighting. I don't like his personality. I think that biases me way too hard. But that being said, he's a decent fighter. I feel like Lozon would be a good fight for him because Lozon's on his way out. No offense to Lozon, but I feel like that'd be a good fight for Trujillo to take.
How about the Felder Cruikshank winner this weekend?
That'd be good too. I feel like because what you really want to do with Trujillo now is like he's on his way up, and you could argue that Lozon or even like the winner loser of the fight this weekend could be on their way out. No offense to any of them. I feel like you want to put Trujillo on a fight where you could start grooming him. I feel like a Lozon fight would be perfect for him to really start working that ground aspect of his camp and everything. I mean, if you really want to get him ready for top 15, top 10 guys, that's the fight to make just because, I mean, it's stylistically, when you want to prepare for Lozon, that's one of the things you got to prepare for. And Lozon's getting to that point in time where, you know, it could be an easy win for Trujillo or it could be a nightmare.
Honestly, he likes to stand and strike. I just want to see him play Edson Barbosa now.
Yeah, I'm done. Take that. I'll do that.
Exciting.
Or Johnson.
Let's get to the featherweight division. Brian Ortega took on former Ultimate Fighter winner Diego Brandao. Again, no surprise, very strong first round by Diego Brandao as he was able to land a barrage of strikes, some very powerful shots to the young man Ortega, outstriking him 28-14. Also was successful on 2 takedowns. Then the second round was really weird. Ortega was not striking very well, but Brandao looked like the wind was kind of gone out of his sails, and he wasn't really doing much anything. He tried to get 1 takedown, unsuccessful. He did outstrike Ortega 22-15, but realistically, you could have called that round a 9-9 because nothing really happened. That was one of the weirdest rounds I think I've ever seen in a fight.
Yeah.
Then in round 3, I don't know what his coaches told Brandao, but they said, hey, just go out there and try to hit him as hard as you can. And he just came out flying at Ortega. And Ortega was trying to dodge these bombs. Eventually, in a scramble, got the fight to the ground and was able to transition to a triangle choke and got the Brazilian to tap in the third round at the 137 marker. And this is a very big win for the young man, Brian Ortega, known as T-City. I mean, he had that great fight against Thiago Tavares, another tough veteran of the sport. Now he takes on Diego Brandao, one of the heaviest hitters in this featherweight division, is able to submit him. This guy has big things in front of him. He, next to, Max Holloway, because they're around the same age, he's a guy I think a lot of guys in this division are going to have to look out for. You've got to work on his striking, obviously, but his submission game is second to none.
This fight's kind of exactly how you broke it down. I was going to lose. I mean, he's going to come out strong. He's going to land his big shots, and if Ortega survives it, eventually he's going to find a home, be able to get what he's known for, T-City, trying to city, he's going to do his thing. And he pulled off. This is huge, and I think Aldo gets a warm-up fight with Ortega next.
Listen. So Brandao's basically Uriah Hall featherweight because he looked great on the Ultimate Fighter. He looked great. And like any fight you go into, it's always dangerous. Like, okay, but Brandao, he's either gonna knock you out or he's gonna submit you. He's a really crafty, quick fighter. Problem is that he may be, a really decent fighter, but people and the moment just get into his head too quick. And I feel like he puts too much pressure on himself to really succeed. And it just like when he feels it slip from his grasp, I feel like in his mind, he's already lost. And so at that point, it allows other fighters to really just, because they're focused in the moment. And instead of him being focused in the moment, he's focused on the fact that he probably just lost the moment. Ortega looked great. I think he weathered the storm of a potential, quick loss. Power is there. I think an excellent fight for him was honestly just anyone top 10. Give him Lentz. Give him Stevens. You can give him. I forgot the guy's name. Oh, what's his name? Anyway, point being, so Ortega, he's a decent fighter. He has, skill everywhere that you would need it. He's 10-0 right now, a top 10 opponent, especially in featherweight. Almost everyone in featherweight is coming off a loss right now, except for two guys, Holloway and Edgar. Everyone's kind of like took a loss to the champ right now, or they lost to each other. So it's a really big mix-up. So
it'd probably be too high for him, but just to see the grappling and submissions, him versus Oliveira.
Oh my goodness, absolutely.
I would be all over that.
I think honestly, because there's a log jam at 45, I think if Oliveira doesn't get Holloway in a rematch, I think Oliveira and Ortega would be
Ortega, or honestly, I would take Ortega and Dennis Seaver. Dennis Seaver, I know he's kind of a shell of what he was. He's still a quick striker though. And that's the thing. Like he's got that different body where it kind of pays to.
Yeah.
And that's why I was going back to grooming fights. Seaver's a grooming fight for these young guys who are coming in. He's still a stocky guy who he throws those crazy fast spinning back kicks. And I mean, I think that's just something that would be a good fight for him to really get the comfortability with.
Yeah, it's tough. Because I want to say on one hand, like, I think Ortega needs to be matched with dangerous strikers, but I feel like he just was. I mean, Brandao is one. But I feel like Brandau's a little more, I don't want to say he fights emotional, but every shot he throws is just that kill shot, and that's part of why he kind of fails.
Yeah, you fight Gray Maynard. Gray Maynard just moved down. Maynard's waiting for it. Gray Maynard's waiting for his 145 fight. So yeah, that's a good division now. So
wide open, like you're saying, he's so young. Obviously he has little holes in the stand up, but there's no doubt he can keep moving. And this kid, who knows where he goes.
Let's get to the next fight in the welterweight division. Very close fight between Lorenz Larkin and Albert Tumanov. It ended up going to Tumanov. Looking at the final strikes, Tumanov did outstrike Larkin 76-69 and also was more active, throwing 194 total strikes to just 155 for Lorenz. Both guys were unsuccessful in their takedown attempts, as both were 0 for 2 in their takedown attempts. First round was very even. The striking numbers back that up. 18 strikes landed for Larkin, 17 for Tumanov. But Tumanov was landing the bigger strikes, or I guess potential fight-ending strikes. Larkin had a good leg kick. In round 2, the leg kick was good, but Tumanov was able to catch Larkin a couple times with some more big bombs. And then heading into round 3, I think those accumulations of the leg kick, it really stifled Tumanov's movement. He wasn't able to push off and land those power shots that he was able to land in rounds 1 and 2. And I think Larkin did edge him in that third round, specifically with the leg kicks. And I don't know if he hurt his hand leading up to this fight or if he hurt it in fight, but Larkin seemed really tentative to box with Tumanov. I mean, yeah, he had a great leg kick all night, but that's all I can really say about Larkin. Tumanov was mixing things up with his punches and kicks. His movement was good, and really, besides not checking that front leg and have it getting shredded to bits by the end of this 15 minutes, that's really the only negative I have for Tumanov, and I think that's why the judges gave him this fight. He was more diverse in his striking, and Larkin seemed perfectly content with just throwing that leg kick, and I don't know if it was the range, the movement. I don't know what it was, but Larkin, a guy who has shown really crisp in and out movement and boxing in his previous efforts in welterweight, didn't look like that guy in this fight. And like I said, I don't know if he hurt his hand, but he just wasn't pulling the trigger with his hands in this fight.
Yeah. Because I feel like Tumanov, it's kind of a tough fight. Because he snaps those those head kicks and those body kicks quick too. When you want to put pressure on him, and I feel like what was happening here is just the same way I thought Tumanov had to win the fight. You can roll back the tape on what I said. You want to beat Lorenz Larkin, pressure him. Tumanov, when he was pushing Larkin on the fence, he realized, okay, I'm getting pressured now. I'm going to snap his lead leg, and he was teeing off on that leg and just tearing down on Tumanov. He was beating that thing bloody, and Tumanov kept coming forward. He would switch his stance, throw a leg kick, throw a head kick, switch back up and just start punching on you again. And the thing is, that's what I think was throwing Larkin off, is that Tumanov would just come up and just put pressure on him. He would just keep him up against fence. There might not have been as great a volume of strikes, but the thing is just he kept Larkin on that back foot, and when he wouldn't, he would keep his leg out of range from getting smacked on. So
yeah, I kind of agree with both. What Jim said was the main effective thing he had was just that leg kick. I don't know what it was. I got really excited. I forget Larkin's last win, but there was a lot of output with the hands. above everything. So I really had high expectations.
That was
coming into
against
this fight.
Ponzinibbio.
Yeah. It wasn't there for him at all. Maybe it's because Tumano's so different or new or dangerous, so it kind of kept him guessing. Who knows? Maybe the body shots early hurt him a little more than it let off because he landed some nasty shots to the body. But either way, it wasn't there. He definitely kept it close, but it was just with that one tool. I mean, I feel like if he let the trigger pull a little more on all his other weapons, this probably would have took this fight.
Looking at the breakdown of where the strikes went, it really backs up what I was saying, as Larkin only landed 22 combined strikes to the head and body, but 47 to the legs. But if you look at Tumanov, almost the complete opposite. 52 to the head, 19 to the body, and 5 to the legs. And I think the fact that he was throwing those shots to areas which are more potentially fight-ending gave him that nod. And when you look at a close fight like this, when the strikes are not that much different, both guys, hurt the other very bad, those are little things I think the judges pick up on. And I think that's what made the difference in this split decision. And I think for Larkin, I think maybe he gets a guy like a Jorge Masvidal. And I think for Tumanov, he maybe gets someone like a Calvin Gastelum.
Tarek Saffiedine.
Potentially. Or, the guy who beat Jorge Masvidal, Ben Henderson, if he resigns. I think that's a huge fight for Ben, but I think it's a good matchup.
It's a fun matchup. I mean, I could see Tumanov take on Brandon Thatch. Did he just get a fight yet?
Yeah, he's on the Pittsburgh card.
Oh yeah, that's right. I saw the fight. I mean, I could see him take on Tarek
Rick
Saffiedine.
Story. Is Rick Story still?
I could see him take on Rick Story.
That'd be a great fight.
I think that'd be an excellent fight for Tumanov because he's one of those guys. He's kind of a puzzle.
We gotta call up Rick Story and tell him to come back because we keep on mentioning fights for him and he's not back yet.
What's going on, dude?
Does someone have Rick
Gunny
Story's
would be a
number?
fun fight, actually. Yeah, Tumanov Gunny would be a fun fight. I mean, because the thing about Gunny, he's not really like I like him, but he's shown that he. Really
and it would be
needs to
another
take
fight,
on
like we
Stu.
said before. Nelson's fight against Maia. If he has another setback at 170, we finally see him move down to 155, which has been rumored pretty much since he came to the UFC that he could make 155. So if Tumanov, that's two solid beatings in a row. This is all hypothetical.
Oh yeah.
Does Nelson
The only
drop
thing with
down?
Nelson now dropping is if Conor goes for that belt there, I don't know if we'll see it at all.
Well,
I feel like I don't think Conor will be in the game long enough for Nelson even to get close. I feel like Conor's going to be
we'll
out.
see.
I feel like
We'll
Conor's
see.
going to defend each belt a couple times and just dip with the cash. No joke. I think he's just going to be in a short amount of time.
Either way, for Tumanov, there's so many big matches.
Yeah, Tumanov's got a bright future.
All right, let's get to the co-main event of the evening. Stipe Miocic against Andrei Arlovski. Gotta say, I was the only one on this panel to pick Stipe Miocic. You both went with Arlovski.
I picked Stipe in my
and,
heart. I just didn't follow
Stipe
it.
ended up winning first round knockout. I will say I was surprised it was a first round knockout. Not surprised that he did knock him out, but in 54 seconds, considering the role Arlovski had been on as of late, awfully impressive for the man from Cleveland, Ohio. And in the process, looks like he netted himself a shot at the UFC title, which he's been looking for a very long time. And I think it's deserved. No offense to Alistair Overeem, but I think knocking out Andrei Arlovski in 54 seconds trumped Overeem knocking out Dos Anjos just because of how lackadaisical both guys were up until the finish. And so because of that, we said it, even though that probably was a bigger matchup on paper, Overeem against Junior Dos Santos, the fact that Stipe had the better performance, I think he kind of leapfrogs Overeem, and he's going to get the shot of Verdum and Velasquez. And honestly, I think he has a chance to be either one of those dudes. I mean, he has just as good as conditioning. He has great wrestling. He's improving his stand-up, I think, vastly since he got knocked out by Stefan Struve. I mean, he went toe-to-toe with Dos Santos for 25 minutes and nearly won. If you can go toe-to-toe with a guy like that, I think you can strike with anybody. And, he dominated Mark Hunt. I think he is a real threat to either Velasquez or Verdum, whoever comes out of that coming up here in, 3 weeks in Las Vegas.
Yeah, no, I mean, if it was any other fight, I probably would have lent, however that word is, with Stipe. I mean, I was really hopeful for an Arlovski return. I was ready for that title fight. Being said, Miocic has an incredible record for being in heavyweight. What is it? He's 12-2, something like that. He's only got
yes.
yeah.
I
So
believe
it's
you are
only two. I
correct.
think
His
it's
only
just
losses
JDS.
are to Struve and JDS.
Yeah, 14
in
and
his whole
2.
entire career.
I mean, and even in that Struve fight, he looked incredibly good. I remember watching that since his last fight. And I'm like, okay, both these guys have really good striking. I loved that fight. And the JDS fight was an excellent fight for him. I think it showed that he could really hang with like really strong championship quality guys. But him and a Verdum or him and a Kane, that's a really tough fight. I mean, if Kane comes back like original Kane on Verdum, that's a hard fight for almost any heavyweight because honestly, the Kane that a lot of us got hyped up on and watched him defend so many times is a bad dude. That guy grinds and has nasty power. And I feel like if that Kane shows up on Verdum, that's a tough fight for Verdum. But Verdum and Stipe, I don't know. I feel like that'd be just a really good striking match. Verdum's obviously a clinic on the ground, but I feel like Stipe wouldn't let it go to the ground. I think he game plans too hard to really let himself fall for that trap. So we'll see.
I don't want nothing to do with this. I hope Overeem gets the shot. Stipe ruined my dream of Arlovski making the best comeback in history.
Hey, we'll get Arlovski Overeem, man.
No, Stipe, just like Dana said, nobody knows you. You don't deserve the shot. Give it to Overeem.
Go back to Ohio, you firefighter.
I thought he was from Russia a week ago, and I figured I was from Ohio. No, but it was a good, impressive win for Stipe. It definitely, I think, signified he gets the title shot. Sucks. He ruined my dreams, but
hey, follow him on Twitter and you'll change your mind. He's hilarious on Twitter.
I think, but in a serious note, in a matchup against either title contender, I don't see him winning. That's honest. Not trying to be biased.
No,
I think he can compete, and he showed that in the Dos Santos fight. He shows that with Andrei Arlovski, and they'll be good. But I think the diverse striking of Verdum mixed with, if you try and wrestle like you did with Mark Hunt, good luck taking like Verdum down. You're not going to want to. And then the striking's been crazy. Good luck out wrestling Kane or even on the feet, dealing with that pressure. I think it's going to be a tough night either way, but he definitely has clearly shown he's the best contender to deserve that shot.
The main event of the evening in a fight that could already be fight of the year for 2016 happened as Robbie Lawler took on Carlos Condit. And I think this fight was everything we thought it would be. I think it was played out exactly how we thought it would be. Robbie Lawler was going to land a lot of heavy shots. Carlos Condit was going to show a multitude of diverse striking. And it was just going to be who had the greater will, who was going to still be standing there at the end. And when it came down to the end, both gentlemen honestly were like zombies. As Condit landed 62 strikes to 53 landed for Robbie Lawler in that round 5 in a culmination of an incredible fight. Fight that went down to a split decision, which the champion was able to retain in Robbie Lawler. And besides that 5th round, which was a very close round, you maybe even could have gave 9-9 just because of how many shots both gentlemen took. But looking at the striking numbers, at least to me, it paints a picture of Carlos Condit winning this fight as he outstruck Lawler in the first round 28-12, outstruck him in the second round 18-11, outstruck him again in round 3 22-11, really dominated him in round 4 47-6. And then, like I said, that 5th round, 62-53. Now, I know the volume's up and they weren't the hard shots always of Robbie Lawler. And I think you make a case that Robbie Lawler probably won round 2 and probably won round 5. Most people had that, giving Condit round 1 and 4 for sure. The question mark for most people was round 3, is how you scored round 3. I had it for Condit. The judges apparently had it for Robbie Lawler. At least 2 of them did. And it also begs the question, what do you got to do to decision the champ? Because I feel like he may have got that boost in this fight. If this was just a regular 5-round main event, no time on the line, I don't think there's any question asked that Carlos Condit has his hand raised in victory. But you add that belt to it, and I think he got a little bit of a nod in this one. He got the championship nod.
Yeah, no, unfortunately, it happens for these guys who are on the wrong end of that. It sucks. Gustafsson, Condit, like you have these tough losses. But at the same time, you got to beat the champ. You got to decisively beat the champ. And just the fact that you can even entertain the possibility of Lawler winning is just the reason why Lawler won. I thought Condit won the fight. But looking back on it, I can see how Lawler, took it. Even, that Condit was throwing a lot more fluidity in the end of the fight. Lawler came out like a beast because he knew he had the win in that 5th round when everyone thought he was gassed and it was just going to be another combo setup from Condit to Coast. He came out there and just plowed him. Dude, he was out on the feet at least twice. I mean, and then Lawler ended up out on his feet at one point. And, and that's the thing is like when you end a fight that strong, that's what's freshest in the minds. Now what judges saw was like, okay, well, obviously we thought the champ was out, but then look at him, here he is. Nearly KO'd the guy. I mean, it shows the heart of both fighters. But, I mean, you really got to beat the champ. And I think Lawler's one of the toughest champs to beat right now because you really, really need to put him away. Otherwise, you're going to have the hardest time.
Yeah, this fight, first off, I'll say, just the build-up and everything going into that round 5. Round 5 might have been the best round of fighting I've ever seen just because how it looked.
Oh, my gosh.
Out there just giving it all. Man, it was one of the best rounds of fighting you could ever watch. That being said, the first time I watched it, when I watched it live, I did think Condit won. And then I kind of went back and watched it, and it's hard. It's one of those classics. You argue, I think Lawler definitely landed the more powerful. He dropped him a few times, I think. I don't remember. He got the one knockout in round 2.
Yeah.
I thought he had another knockdown. He might not have. And it's close. I don't know if it's damage or output. John McCarthy was talking about how Condit, a lot of the punches he was throwing, they weren't as significant as they looked. A lot of them were hitting glove.
And that guy had the best seat in the house. So
it's tough to judge. I think you edge it to Lawler, and it's just because he put the stamp on. I mean, I just want to say Robbie Lawler in the 5th. That's like Diego Sanchez in the 3rd. I mean, I don't think anyone did it in the last round. He did it to Johnny Hendricks. He did it to Condit. This puts on another one of the best fights you're ever going to watch. Back to back, this in the Rory fight.
Yeah.
You can't have a close fight with the champ. You're not going to decision the champ. It's not going to happen. We've seen it time and time again.
So I don't know. It's tough for him. I think the follow up for that though, and I'm just going to throw this out there. There's only 2 fights to make now. Only 2. All right. 1, GSP. 2, he holds out, takes some time to heal. And enjoy this new Reebok sponsorship that he's probably going to announce tomorrow because he's on ESPN. He's announcing something tomorrow. Or Nick Diaz in a rematch. I would take it. A lot of people would argue like, oh, Nick Diaz shouldn't have jumped the line. Da, da, da. Well, who else at this weight class is really going to fight him right now?
I think the fight to make is Robbie Condit too. I really do. I really think it's
I feel
the
like
fight to make. And no offense to Tyron Woodley, who definitely has earned a shot, but again, this blame Johnny Hendricks. It was the fact that he didn't have that fight with Hendricks. That he didn't have that signature crowning win to me that says this guy's the number 1 contender. He gets it because Hendricks couldn't make weight. And
same thing with
I mean, that's not Tyrone's fault. That's not his fault. But I think at the end of the day, you would still like to see Woodley fight one more time. And I think also the fact that Woodley has done some training in Coconut Creek with Robbie Lawler, maybe he's not as quick to fight Robbie as he would if Carlos would have came out of this. So Woodley actually may take a step back just because he doesn't want to fight Robbie Lawler.
And that's what I think might happen.
And if that does, it opens him up to fight somebody, maybe like a Damian Maia, and solidify a number 1 contender.
Well, so I mean, because that's the thing with Lawler, I feel like he might end up sitting back and let the dust settle with the division. Because right now, Damian Maia Woodley would be an excellent fight.
Mm-hmm.
I feel like Condit's actually going to retire. I feel like that he left a piece of himself in that he's not getting back.
If he doesn't get the rematch, I honestly think that I know he hinted at it. It sounds absurd as it sounds that he would retire. It's a possibility.
I mean, when you look at his last 2 fights, I mean,
necessarily his age. It's just the fact how many fights he's had.
Yeah.
He's 31, but he's had 40 fights.
Well, when you have
he's had a lot of wars in those 40 fights.
Well, when you have a tough loss like you did the GSP, and then you basically just
lost the Hendricks.
Yeah, and then you snap your knee against Tyron Woodley, and then you have a tough loss on Robbie Lawler. Yeah, you had like a comeback fight on Alves and whatnot, but it's just like Condit's been in some wars, and that dude's been putting it up there. He's been around since WEC days, and it's just like
last ever WEC welterweight champion.
I feel like he's left too much in there. I feel like he's gone. Robbie's just either going to take a money fight with a big name and let the dust settle for a true contender.
I'm going to tell you why none of this matters in the one true contender. This morning, a man named John Kavanaugh put out a tweet that said, this time next year, Conor McGregor will be doing the same thing, but to the 170-pound weight class.
All right,
That's real life.
so Lawler needs to hurry up and bulk up and get out of 170 so he's not caught in that train wreck.
Lawler's just going to move back up to middleweight.
So I think it's best they both retire now and save the embarrassment for someone else.
Could you imagine, though, if Damian Maia beats Woodley and takes Lawler on? Some people are talking about it, and I kind of agree. That might be a huge threat for Lawler.
Well, I think Damian Maia could beat Lawler.
If he can get him to the ground, I think it's a done day. I think it's done. I mean, it's obviously the striking thing. That's the thing. He's got excellent TDD. I mean, he's like a mini Chuck Liddell. He's not knocking people out cold in the first or second, but he's a brawler. I mean, it's hard to take him down.
And the thing is, Robbie has been submitted by great jiu-jitsu players. I mean, Jake Shields did submit him as well.
Yeah, Damian Maia is the best in the UFC right now, jiu-jitsu wise. And you think he won't find a way to take you down? Yeah. You think he won't find a way to take you down? It's scary. He'll backpack him, dude.
But yeah, I think for Lawler, if I'm saying personally the fights I want to see, obviously Nick, but I think Nick will probably have to take a fight back first. I'd like to see a rematch with Condit immediately. I think that's a good fight. I think Woodley Maia is the best matchup, like you said, and that's
We'll see what he says tomorrow. He's got that announcement, so
fight George at 200.
Now, see that to me is a more likely scenario.
That's
Nick
probably
against
honestly,
GSP
weirdly
on
enough,
Fight Pass in Montreal.
that is the most likely. That is probably the most likely outcome, though. That he fights GSP out of all the things in the division. That's probably the most likely is that GSP comes back and fights.
It would be on Fight Pass, and because it's GSP, you would sell out the Bell Center, which sells out every fight except Mighty Mouse, instantly. So it's really a win-win for the UFC. You're going to make a huge live gate for a Fight Pass event.
But what happens? Okay, here's the problem with UFC. What? I like Mighty Mouse. He's on Twitch right now.
They were giving away tickets to go see him in Montreal.
I think more people watch his Twitch stream than they watch his fights.
That's a 20,000 seat arena for a pay-per-view in a city that's rabid like Montreal, and they couldn't get over 10,000 people in there
because you can't see him past the crowd.
Well,
I mean,
yeah.
But I don't know. I think GSP is a tough one for the UFC right now, just because. I mean, he kind of just ditched him. I mean, it's like that's kind of scary for them to say, "Oh yeah, come back, fight Lawler. We'll give you the title shot." Okay, what if he slumps Lawler and just takes the belt and flips the bird and then goes starts his own league and everything?
What if when's the last time he slumped anyone?
I mean, he slumps the crowd because his fights. But I mean,
realistically though, I only see GSP coming back if he gets signed to like a 3-fight deal.
I think he's too big. I think it would just be a catchweight fight. I feel like we're going to see a lot of more title fights where the guys are like, you know what? I'll fight you at 180 kind of thing. Why put my belt on the line? I could. He's probably going to.
Probably
the
will.
UFC is going to hold on to that.
I want GSP to come back to Bellator.
You say Nate Diaz, Benson?
GSP to come back to Bellator?
I want him to come to Bellator. His comeback fight.
I mean, if that gets him back over in Plymouth, I mean, that'd be okay with it.
What if GSP fights Fedor in the next Risen fight?
That'd be the.
Why has that not happened yet?
Okay, I'm just gonna say this real quick.
GSP walks around 200 pounds. That's only like Fedor's only like 30 more pounds.
That's a dream come true for me because the first UFC event I watched was UFC 100. I didn't know anything about it. I thought GSP was fighting Lesnar that night, so I picked GSP to win. So I mean, if he comes back to fight at heavyweight and takes on Fedor, I'm happy with that.
Oh, it's probably gonna be Kurt Angle Fedor.
Honestly, though, I don't want to get off on this tangent.
GSP's going to grease up and just slide under the ropes and just.
Do you think they give Fedor a real opponent at this time? Though? Not a real.
Not a chance. Unless it's Crow Cop, not a chance. I don't think there's any.
Deep Singh have a brother?
I don't think there's enough real names out there left. I think.
Is Tim Sylvia still around? Is he a thing?
Tim Sylvia's at the buffet right now.
Okay.
All right, he's not going to make Fedor wait.
Hey, he can't be any worse than John Deep Singh or whatever his name is.
Maybe.
I don't know. I just look here. Can you imagine if Sapp decided to just stop throwing fights and just take him out?
Is Dan Severn still fighting?
Yeah.
Actually, he is. I think. Yeah.
He's fighting Gracie next week.
Probably.
It's same mustache and everything.
That's right. Winner of Shamrock Gracie fights Fedor in the next Risen fight.
Dude, can we get Kimbo Fedor? Like,
I thought the Shamrock Gracie Kimbo Dotto was a tournament style fight, and then that night they have a one tournament winner, and then they fight Fedor.
they fight all in their own cage, and the cage opens
I feel
up.
like King Mo's probably going to fight Fedor.
That'd be a good idea.
That'd be. I could see that fight. I think Fedor.
Way to get serious.
Yeah, I mean, well, he had to wrap it back in. Yeah.
That'd be a good fight.
That's a
I mean,
good
who else-
fight.
I mean, it's King Mo.
Yeah, who else is Fedor gonna really fight? I mean, that's the problem. Like, you got a couple Japanese
I
names out there.
honestly think King
Shinya
Mo's like
Aoki.
that.
I mean, if you
And
want.
King Mo really got famous fighting in Dream. That's how he made.
Yeah.
That's how he got.
Well, I
big,
like
so-
King Mo over there and everything.
I
Actually, I
think
think
it
he puts a good
works.
twist on everything.
You fight Ren?
Justin,
Yeah, no,
Pygmy dude,
Who's the heavyweight at Bellator that has the? Is that him?
Justin Wren.
Yeah.
Yeah.
You had the book.
Yeah,
Yeah.
yeah. He saved the Pygmy people.
Right. Yeah. Yeah. That's
Yeah.
him.
I like. He's a nice dude. Pygmy.
Bobby Lashley.
You know what?
Hey.
If
Hey,
you're-
Herschel Walker, man, let's do it.
Brock's
Could
coming
be.
back.
Hey, I'm just saying. Also, just another bit of speculation. BJ Penn did take a picture with Mike Winkeljohn, saying big things are coming.
Big things are coming.
He's going back to fight Fedor over in Risen.
Oh,
Actually.
no. He did fight Lyoto Machida.
This is really crazy. But he's talking about coming out to take another fight with Mike Tyson. I'm saying.
All right, we're out. We somehow went from 195 to Fedor's next opponent. So let's get off this and let's get to this weekend's fight. UFC Fight Night, Eddie 1, better known as UFC Boston. TJ Dillashaw against Dominic Cruz for the UFC Bantamweight Championship. Got to give a shout out to our hometown guy, Darren Cruikshank. He will be taking on Paul Felder on the undercard. Also, I think this is going to be a pretty solid fight. Tim Boesch against Ed Herman, two longtime veterans of the sport. I think that's going to be an interesting fight. And also just added against Francimar Barrasso, the former Maximum Fighting champion and World Series of Fighting contender, Elvis Mutachik will finally make his debut in the UFC, filling in on a week's notice to take on Francimar Barrasso, and obviously up a weight class. Mutachik has fought most of his career in the middleweight division, so it'll be interesting to see how Elvis does. He does own some good victories in his career, so exciting to see him. And also Mehdi Baghdad, just off the Ultimate Fighter here for the UFC. He will be filling in also on a week's notice to take on Chris Wade. And also a couple interesting matchup in the welterweight division. Patrick Cote against Ben Saunders. I think is a very interesting. That's like
fight.
that's the headline fight for the prelims.
Was Mehdi back? Was he not the RFA champion? I thought he was. I'm trying to look it up here.
I know he was on the Ultimate. Let's see here. Looking at, yeah, he probably was the RFA champion. His last two fights, two knockouts for RFA. So he was probably the RFA 155 champion. Went to the Ultimate Fighter, didn't win.
I like this guy.
But now gets his chance, like I said, on a week's notice. So it'll be interesting to see. A great striker. 8 of his 11 career victories are by knockout. So those are some of the highlight fights for the undercard here for this UFC Fight Night 81. And let's get to the 4-fight main card. Starting first, I think this is a very nice matchup here in the lightweight division as Ross Pearson takes on Francisco Trinaldo. Trinaldo's coming off, you can make a case, the biggest win of his career, knocking out Chad Laprise in his last fight, taking on the former Ultimate Fighter winner in Ross Pearson, who's kind of traded wins and losses recently. Ross Pearson did, however, win a split decision over Paul Felder in his last fight in September of last year, but is 2-2 in his last 4 fights, losing to the likes of Evan Dunham and Al Iaquinta. And also he has a knockout win over Sam Stout in that span as well, dating back to November of 2014. And I think Pearson is probably the better overall striker, but I think Trinaldo is a more well-rounded fighter. I think he proved that he does have knockout power, knocking out Laprise like he did in his last fight, but also has some very good submissions. And again, I always like to speak this. He's on a roll. He's on a 4-fight winning streak, beating the likes of Leandro Silva, Akbar Areola, Norman Park, and Chad Laprise. Those last two pretty solid names there, beating Laprise and Norman Park, 2 former Ultimate Fighter winners. Now he's trying to add a third to his list if he can beat Ross Pearson. And I think if he can get a guy like Ross Pearson, beat him, despite being 37 of 8 years old, he becomes a very interesting guy in this loaded lightweight division.
This is a weird fight for me. I feel like I start every sentence with that. First of all, Masa Randuba. That's an insane pseudonym. I feel like Ross Pearson, he's kind of hit or miss. It depends what fight he's showing up to and everything. He's definitely a brawler. But I mean, there's been occasions where it's just like, what are you doing, Ross? Well, you're sitting here, you're eating a couple punches here. Like, you're kind of a little bit better than this. And lately, he's been showing that he's really been like spring chicken, in and out, tag. Trinaldo, he had a tough time against Michael Chiesa, which that's not knocking him.
That was his last loss.
Mm-hmm. Yeah. Chiesa's a decent dude, but that's saying Chiesa's a pressure guy. I mean, how are you going to do against Ross Pearson pressure? Trinaldo's a decent fighter. He's got some power, but I don't know. This is actually one fight where I'm not stumped because I feel like both fighters are so good. It can go either way. It's just one of those fights where it just really depends kind of on how either one shows up on the right night or how well the camp went. I mean, this fight's one of those things where it's just like one poor weight cut could just tilt it where the other guy just gasses early, another guy just tees off quick. I mean, it's going to be really kind of interesting to watch. I think it's going to be a great fight. I think it'll be a lot of fun, but it's definitely going to give more to the mindset to see really how both of these dudes are really serious about this. Who's going to come out fresher.
Yeah, this one's tough, I think, because I like that Trinaldo, he's on his roll, he's coming to his own. The striking in this fight is pretty even, like you said, but I think Trinaldo has a little more weapons in other places that might give him that edge to almost even out on the feet because he has more things to threaten than Pearson. So I think they both have knockout power. They're both striking good. The only thing that's tough for me is it's hard to see a guy coming up, finally hitting his own at 37. It worries me a little bit. And he has took losses before. He's not like this dominant like Daniel Cormier, who's new to MMA, and he has this dominant athletic background. I don't know what it was, but he's been off and on in MMA. So it's tough. Same with Ross Pearson. There's both sort of back and forth, almost gatekeepers now that are going to go at each other. It's really a coin flip on this one.
The next fight of the evening is in the heavyweight division as Travis Brown takes on Matt Mitrione. Both are very dangerous strikers. Both have a lot of knockout power. In fact, I believe almost all of Matt Mitrione's wins, I think, but one is by knockout. And Travis Brown, of course, a guy that was very close to getting a UFC title shot not too long ago, trying to bounce back after losing to Andrei Arlovski. And I think Brown is the favorite because Matt Mitrione has beaten the nobodies of the heavyweight division. When he's taking on anyone that has some sort of name recognition, he's lost and has lost badly. I mean, look at his last fight against Ben Rothwell, a guy with a little name recognition. What happens? He gets weird hand guillotine choke thing. You know what I mean? Like, and I think Travis Brown, despite all the media circus around his leaving his wife and now dating Ronda Rousey and all that sort of thing, I don't think that the style, the way he fights, I don't think that factors in. He fights too quick for that to really play a factor, I think, in his mental preparation, especially taking a guy with equally dangerous hands. And really, unless Brown just doesn't show up and doesn't have that output, I think this is a win for him. Maybe, but if Mitrione wins, maybe he finally has turned the corner by beating somebody that is somewhat of an elite fighter. And if he can beat Travis Brown, boy, that really opens up the door for him, I think. Despite, again, a guy being, an older heavyweight.
Mitrione has a win over some of the biggest star power names in MMA. Kimbo Slice. Let's talk about name recognition. Matt Mitrione has that win. And so on. No, but realistically, yeah, Travis Brown, people really on this hype train like it was his time, and then he took the Verdun fight, that was before Arlovski, so he loses to Verdun, and then Arlovski takes him up from the big one over before. I still think it's all there, but I think it is a weird time for him. You kind of brought up he has all this stuff going on outside the cage. I don't want to have to factor in, but I kind of do. I think there's a lot of stuff going I was joking around with the Kimbo thing, but yeah, as soon as he gets against these top tier guys, you got to favor Brown. He just fought the names, but I think this match is just going to be a striking match. But I think Brown's just more diverse. I think Mitrione's like a straight boxer. Travis Brown can bring a lot more to the table.
And also a guy that if you don't take him down, those elbows up against the cage, he's knocked out like 3 guys in that
Every
position.
weapon.
Yeah,
So if
he's a murderer.
Mitrione gets hurt, shoots in for a takedown instinctively, it's one of the worst things you can do on Travis
Yeah,
Brown.
and that's kind of what Mitrione does. He kind of shoots in for those takedowns. You know,
And
he's
burned him.
well,
in his
he's a
last
big guy.
fight.
I mean, he's an ex-football player. You know, I mean that's the thing, and so that's kind of what his big thing is to kind of rush and manhandle you if he gets the chance. He's got power. He could knock out Travis Brown. I wouldn't have. I
could.
wouldn't be surprised.
They could.
But Travis Brown is 1-0 against ex-football players, Brendan Schaub. But he's also, I feel like he's a bit more diverse and flexible with his striking. And I feel like that's just going to frustrate Matt Mitrione. I love Matt Mitrione. I want him to win this fight.
I think so too.
Personal bias out because of Travis Brown.
Does anyone like Travis Brown though?
I think
I always liked him as a fighter, but the
I
more
think
of his
he's kinda
personality came out,
soured on a lot of people.
Yeah,
now. This
well,
whole thing with his
the
wife
yeast has
and
risen
the-
on this one, and I'm kind of
Yeah.
burnt out on it.
I liked him for a second when he gave me an exciting applause.
When he knocked it over him, I was like his biggest fan. I probably would have took them all. But yeah, the thing is just like I don't know. Mitrione could put the pressure on him, but I think that's the last thing you kind of want to do on Travis Brown right now, is because he's probably kind of sour after that loss, and his girlfriend just took that loss, and it's just like that camp really needs to pull something together. And this is a good fight just for Mitrione. The thing is, if Brown loses here, he's out of title contention. That's how heavyweight works. You lose 2 in a row, you're out of title contention.
especially loses, like I said, to Matt Mitrione, who hasn't beat
Exactly.
any quality
So if you take a
names.
loss to Arlovsky, who just lost, and then you take a loss to Mitrione, who basically loses whenever he feels, you know, it's like you're not up there in the title shot anymore. And honestly, that just puts Mitrione just right back up there.
Well, how bad does Mitrione need this? Because this is the fight where it's like, are you ever going to be a top lead fighter, or are you just
gonna take
on?
on
Well, yeah.
Justin
I mean,
Rose.
I don't think Mitrione's gonna. I feel like he's just gonna drop another one to something ridiculous.
This is his last shot for sure.
Mhm.
Yeah, when even then in that division, it's like, well, you can't cut heavyweights. It's not enough, and so that's the problem. They're just gonna go back and forth fighting each other until you get rematches everywhere. So
All right, let's get to the co-main event of the evening as former UFC lightweight champion takes on former Bellator lightweight champion Eddie Alvarez. And looking at this matchup, it really is the boxing of Eddie Alvarez against the overall kickboxing game of Anthony Pettis. The X factor, Alvarez has a decent top game, but Anthony Pettis has shown that if you give him an opportunity off his back, he can submit you. Ask Ben Henderson and ask Gilbert Melendez. He is a guy that is very opportunistic. And while Eddie Alvarez has a good top game, it's not quite Rafael Dos Anjos, and I don't think he could replicate that game plan that led Dos Anjos to beat Pettis for the lightweight title. And if this turns into a fight standing on the feet, I don't think Alvarez, while probably more one-shot knockout power than Anthony Pettis, I don't think overall is as better of a striker, and we may see a similar type dismantling of Alvarez that Cowboy Cerrone was able to put on with a variety of kicks that led to a barrage of punches later on. So for Alvarez, if he does stay boxing, he has to do it in close and make this an ugly fight and not allow Pettis to strike at distance, because if Pettis strikes on distance and he's able to get kicks off, he realistically, kicking power, one kick away from ending a fight.
yeah, this one's gonna be a very interesting fight. It's gonna be a big, important fight for lightweight. I feel bad for Alvarez. You know, he got jerked around so much legal wise with his contract, and then he finally gets out of it and gets over to the UFC, and then he just faces a murderer's row, and it's just like, dude, you're getting a rough treatment right now. I mean, I'm glad he's number 4. He deserves it. He's a great lightweight, but that's the thing, is he's been fighting UFC caliber lightweights, and it just shows like, dude, he's been kicked around relentlessly. And Anthony Pettis is no joke, especially in Anthony Pettis that now come back in with the chip on his shoulder because he just got manhandled by the current champ, you know, and everyone just thinks Pettis slacks off now. And there's a reason they call him Showtime. This dude is insane. He's a great fighter, and I think he let that slide a little. So he's going to come back and try to prove something. I'm just saying there's a possibility out there of 2 fights happening after this. Pettis wins, he's either going to fight Ferguson or he's going to fight the winner of RDA Connor. Could you imagine if Conor has a choice to fight Pettis or Edgar. Just saying.
Yeah, this fight we've seen TGB Anthony Pettis. It's just high pressure wrestling mixed in. I don't want to compare the striking because Eddie Alvarez, great boxing, great striker. There's not many people at the level of striking of Anthony Pettis. There's only a few you can put in his caliber. If you give him his space, he will find his way to knock you out. But for Alvarez, I don't think he can follow that classic game plan that like RDA one, like you said, his top game's not nearly as good. Even Guida got away with it. He had a lot of pressure, but I think he'd find himself in tough and submissions. I think his key to win this fight is all in the clinch. I think he's had success there a little bit in the Cerrone fight that he had. And yeah, he has to keep it close, keep it dirty with that clinch, because if he gives Pettis any space at all, it's over. And even if he puts him on his back, he's going to have a tough time, because if you think Anthony Pettis hasn't been drilling his wrestling all day and he already has submissions from the bottom, I mean, I'm giving away a pick, but it's going to be a tough night for the Alvarez anywhere this goes.
The main event of the evening will be for the Bantamweight Championship of the World as the champion TJ Dillashaw puts his title on the line once again, this time on the former and first ever Bantamweight champion in the Dominator, Dominic Cruz. Stylistically, these guys are almost mirror images of each other. These are guys that use great footwork and head movement in and out of the pocket, a lot of volume. They mix up their strikes. They mix in, low power with high power. They catch you off guard. They're hard to take down. If they want to take you down, they can almost do that at will. The biggest difference between these two is the fact that Cruz is one of the taller guys in the division at 5'9", and Dillashaw more middle of the road at around 5'6", 5'7", and probably a little longer reach here. Only by 1 inch, surprisingly. So other than that, the biggest question mark is the layoff. Dominic Cruz has only fought once in 3 years. Is his conditioning where it was before he left off, which is another attribute to TJ Dillashaw being a champion and staying a champion like he has, is his conditioning, his ability to keep high outputs into the 5th round. And that, again, that was something Cruz was known for. But now, one fight in 3 years later and a couple blown ACLs is a lot of time. And he's arguably taking on the best guy he's ever fought in his career. I mean, no offense to the 2 fights he had with Uriah Faber, but Dillashaw may be the best guy Dominic Cruz has ever had to fight while being, towards the top of this division. As scary as that is to think. And it's not saying Cruz doesn't have a chance, but a lot of things are against him in this matchup in Boston.
Yeah. I mean, for Dillashaw, I mean, his rise to the top was just that styles and matchups and fights, I mean, he came in there, he surprised the world with Hennebarrow, and then he did it again eventually in the eventual rematch. No one's surprised by any of that. And then he fought Joe Soto, won that fight. Soto landed a couple more shots on him than Hennon, I believe, in my opinion. But yeah, Dillashaw has definitely shown that he's almost like a replica of, what Cruz was. I think that's why so many people were so excited when he came in. He's like, oh my gosh, this guy fights like Dominic Cruz. Like, this is insane. We haven't seen this forever. And I feel like as the sport's matured, there's a lot more of an appreciation for that style of fighting. I mean, it's a lot more technical. Being said, Dillashaw's only fights have been Hennebarrow and Joe Soto. He hasn't fought something like Dominic Cruz. He hasn't fought really something much different. There's even one round where I could have argued Joe Soto beat him, and that's kind of scary. But it's just like Dominic Cruz. There's a reason so many people are excited for him to come back. I mean, he's on that 2-year layoff, came back, he won a fight, out again a year. A lot of people are skeptical on how he's going to be, conditioning, where he places. Look at Mike McDonald just a couple of weeks ago. He came in and won his fight. I mean, he was out just as long, I mean, he plays right back up there. But, while they have the same style fighting, and I think it's going to be really interesting to see, like almost a mirror match, the biggest thing you could take away from Dominic Cruz is just that if you look at how many fights he's won with decision, 60% of his fights are decision victories. That just shows that he knows how to fight. He knows how to win. What happened last time we had a champ who won mostly with decisions? We had GSP, who no one could touch because when something got bad for him, he knew where to take it. That's what Dominic Cruz is going to do. If things get bad against Dillashaw, he knows where to take the fight. You know, I mean, he's already got in Dillashaw's head. I mean, you've seen that just in the past interview. I don't know.
It's tough. If you want to, all right, say we put all questions aside, we put the layoff aside, we just put these two prime against each other. Just as much as you can say Dillashaw is probably the toughest fight of Cruz's career, which it arguably is, it's the same for Dillashaw. He clearly hasn't fought no one of that. And it's just Dillashaw followed his route to a T. I mean, like we talked about styles enough, they're almost the exact same. I think Cruz is a little more effective. I think he really pioneered it. Dillashaw does it. I don't think he understands it quite as much. I think going back to the Soto fight, he took a lot of hits in that fight. Joe Soto landed a lot of them overhand rights.
He does leave his head out there a little more than Cruz does. That's I guess if you look at any hole in Dillashaw's game, that may be it.
I like what Billy just said. I want to capitalize on what you just said for a minute. Dillashaw doesn't understand why what he does works. I'm not saying Dillashaw doesn't know why he fights and everything and why he does what he does. But when you compare him to Cruz knows what he's doing and why it's effective. Whereas Dillashaw, you saw him have a little bit more frustration on Soto because he thought he could do the same thing he did on Barrow. You know, where he just, he used effective footwork to really pace that. And that's the thing. It's like, gotta take it from you. Go ahead, keep going.
No, I think the biggest thing, like you said, he has a lot of decision wins, that being Dominic Cruz. But I honestly think if this fight does go into the 4th and 5th round, which by all prediction of how these two gentlemen fight, it probably will go to the 4th and 5th round, is how Cruz will hold up. Because I think the conditioning is one thing, but the knees, being able to hang on those knees, because like we said, even though it was a dominant win over Mizugaki, 67 seconds, it kind of sucked. It was 67 seconds.
67 into the 4th round. Or 5th round.
That's what I mean. We didn't get to see how is that knee hold up over getting kicked.
And then look at Dillashaw. I mean, the thing is, Dillashaw, 2 of his victories as champ are in 5th round knockouts. That's the thing. So he's good at pacing it. So
it's a very interesting main event, and Billy and I actually got lucky enough to get some tickets last minute to this event. I think we're gonna get spoiled by this fight, and I think it's just gonna be fantastic. I don't know if it's gonna be better than the main event we just saw in Las Vegas, but I honestly think it can rival it.
Another point I want to bring up too. Well, X factor. Cruz gets hit less. I think Dillashaw has a little more power. B, I haven't seen a guy really try and take Dillashaw down. One thing Cruz does better than anything is mix up striking. And I don't know what Dillashaw's game's like off his back. Been an alpha male. I'm sure he's good. I'm sure he's a strong wrestler. But we haven't seen him in these situations where he's frustrated, taking down, and he has to deal with the striking of Cruz. So there's a lot of questions for Dillashaw, just as much as for Cruz. The questions are obviously the layoff. Will it still be there? Everything. So this fight is really exciting. I mean, we get to see, I think, the 2 best bantamweights of all time. Either way, will for sure determine it. I'm really excited for this fight.
With that said, let's get to picks. UFC Fight Night Boston, Sunday, January 17th on Fox Sports 1. The first fight of the evening in the lightweight division. The real deal, Ross Pearson against Colin. I think it's Masarumba. Francisco Trinaldo. I usually pick the guys on the roll, and I'm continuing here as I will take Trinaldo. I think his submission game and the threat of the submissions is a big factor for me, and I'll take him over Ross Pearson.
Yeah, as much as that, it just worries me. He's 37, and he gets caught a little bit. He gets caught in the brawl, and I think Ross is enough to maybe catch him with something. I like Ross Pearson.
Yeah, I'm gonna have to go with Trinaldo. I feel like at this point, I mean, you got a veteran who's been around for a while, and then you got a guy on the up and coming. You just kind of got to go with the dude who's more well-rounded. Age-wise might be a problem, but same thing with just wear and tear. Ross Pearson just might not show up. So Trinaldo.
Heavyweight division, Travis Brown against Matt Mitrione. Like you guys said, it'd be nice if Matt Mitrione got the win, but I got to go with just the way he's performed against better opponents, so I got to take Travis Brown in this one.
Picking the upset, Matt Mitrione pulls this off, man. Something about Brown, I think he's kind of out of that. I think he's got too much going on. Mitrione's going to have his boxing in his heavy man any day.
Yeah, I've learned not to go with my heart. I got to go with Travis Brown on this one. I want Mitrione to win. I do. But Travis Brown, I think his striking's too versatile.
Co-main event of the evening, Anthony Showtime Pettis against Eddie Alvarez. I think as most fans know of this show, I'm a huge fan of Anthony Pettis, and I don't think in this show I think I picked against him, and it's not going to start now. So give me Showtime Anthony Pettis for the win.
Yeah, it's going to be tough anywhere Alvarez goes. I feel bad for him because he came to UFC and got like 3 top 5 opponents in a row. So, but Anthony Pettis gets this fight.
Yeah, I'm going with Pettis also. At least Alvarez is making a nice paycheck off of losing. So,
the main event of the evening for the UFC Bantamweight Championship, TJ Dillashaw against former champion Dominic Cruz. I think, like you guys said, if it wasn't injury, if it was Cruz coming off his win over Uriah Faber, or around that area of time, I think with no question you probably pick Dominic Cruz. But that's if you don't do your job for basically 3 years, it's hard to say you're going to be the same, regardless of what your job is. So I think he's going to have a tough time. Again, guy in the role is right now TJ Dillashaw. So give me Dillashaw for the win.
First off, I just want to say thanks to Jimbo Slice. I got to see this fight live. I'm really excited. And I'm so happy. So thanks for letting me get to see this. But I think Dominic Cruz comebacks and gets it done. He's going to do it. Nothing ever happened. I'm just going with my heart all together on this card for some reason. Dominic Cruz.
I mean, I want to say TJ Dillashaw, and just because I feel like if it goes to decision, it's hard to decision the champ.
That's true.
But if there's anyone who's going to do it, Dominic Cruz is going to show everyone how you decision a champ. So I'm going to go with Dominic Cruz.
All right, he is Colin Camper. He is Billy Brandt. You can follow him on Twitter at WBrandt21. I'm your host, Jim Gramm. You can follow me on Twitter at Jim Gramm. Also, stay tuned to my Instagram page, The Jim Gramm. Someone already had Jim Gramm, so it really pissed me off. Anyways, we will be updating pictures of myself and Billy at UFC Boston, and, of course, live reactions and stuff on Twitter. So stay tuned for that, as well as we'll get to see this one in person. I'll give a shout out to our friends at MMAfreak.com, MMAinsider.net, MMAforlife.ca, and of course the great AJ Hiller at MMASignaturesUSA.com. Boy, he's gotten a lot of big time names here in the last couple of months. So if you're looking for some great signed gear, definitely go hit up his website, the largest dealer of MMA memorabilia in the world, not just the US, in the world. All right, that is our show. We'll be back next week right here on YouTube, youtube.com/Beyond the Cage Podcast. And also be sure to like our Facebook page at facebook.com/Beyond the Cage Podcast. So for Colin and Billy, I'm your host, Jim Gramm, and thank you for listening to another edition of Beyond the Cage.